right?
For sure. I mean, again, like I said, there's different needs at different age groups, right? Like if I'm at the college level, my responsibility was to take care, as Chris Shamity, the head coach, would say, is like, you can have fun in the offseason, Omar, in spring. Do all the things you want to do in spring, but I need our starting goalkeeper to be ready for 19, 20 games. That's all I need. I don't want him to be learning anything new. I want him to be sound and ready. So again, for me, at that level, the expectation is that I'm mindful of the number one, the number two, three, four, five. I'll take care of them, but number one is a priority. And then now, when you get to the pro level, I mean, last season I watched it with Oka. It's like you have three goalkeepers that are all depending on you for their continued growth and their continued development. So you have to put three different plans, or like in every session, coach things that are in their IDPs or coach things that are things they need to work on. So that's how I would say. And here as well, it's like the starter would be with the first team, the third goalkeeper, Abraham Romero. And Joss, I had some goalkeepers from UCLA, Sam Joseph, Giancarlo was at Oregon State. These guys, I mean, they have their college environments, but when they come to me, my job isn't to, completely tear their game down. It's to find ways to optimize things that are working for them. And so for me, it's like more development based, where like once they leave me, hopefully we've identified and worked on certain things. But then when I get the starter, it's more of like a warm up progression for me. When I get the actual like starters in Angel City, I'm working with three potential starters every single day. And that's something that like your expectation of like how much attention you put to one goalkeeper in your previous environments, now you have to put it into all three. And that in itself is like, now I'm prepared for it. Now I feel like I've created a process of how to do one at a time. Now I can take all that and multiply it by three.
See, I love Saskia. One of the things that Omar said right there, and I think we talked about it with Sergio Gonzalez, from Racing Louisville, is that you've got to make sure that you personalize those IDPs even at the first team level, in order to, because everyone's in a different stage of development. Fuck. Lost everything. God damn
it. That mental strength.
Some goalkeepers from UCLA, Sam Joseph, Giancarlo was at Oregon State. These guys, I mean, they have their college environments, but when they come to me, my job isn't to, completely tear their game down. It's to find ways that are working for them. And so for me, it's like more development based, where like once they leave me, hopefully we've identified and worked on certain things. But then when I get the start, like a warm up progression for me. When I get the actual like starters in Angel City, I'm working with three potential starters every single day. And that's something that like your expectation of like how much attention you put to one goalkeeper in your previous environments, now you have to put it into all three. And that in itself is like, now I'm prepared for it. Now I feel like I've created a process of how to do one at a time. Now I can take all that and multiply it by three.
See, I love Saskia. One of the things that Omar said right there, and I think we talked about it with Sergio Gonzalez, from Racing Louisville, is that you've got to make sure that you personalize those IDPs even at the first team level, in order to, because everyone's in a different stage of development. Like, yes, there's certain expectations at the first team level, but when you have a three who might have just come out of college, like, there's still some growth there. And like, obviously, you're going to want them to put in time on their own, but it is also your job to help guide them.
For sure. For sure. And I think that's,
that was a question.
That was a question for Saskia, wasn't it?
Or was it was a little rhetorical.
Oh, okay.
No, yes. And again, like Omar said, right now at Angel City, he has three goalkeepers that want to start and are potential starters, and so you're kind of changing that mentality. Now, once you get into season, right, you've had preseason since the end of January, right? So once you've gone through, get into season, that might change a little bit. And I'm like, now you're prepping, whether if it's Harcheach, if it's Anderson, whatever, you're prepping them for that next game that week. At the same time, making sure your other two goalkeepers are ready at any second. But now that changes, your periodization changes to, make sure, they're ready for the next game. But now in preseason and stuff like that, they're battling. Everybody knows that, they're battling for a starting spot. You might have a young keeper that comes in that, is probably the number 3, and that, you've identified that, and maybe a 4th that's like your academy player or something. But it's totally different. And you can't just automatically go in, for coaches out there, with to say, this is my starter, these are my backups, I'm only going to focus on them, because it might be different for where you're at and the level you're at.
Sure.
And I think
100%.
I think Omar, just one thing real quick.
Yeah, you guys we're at Pepperdine right now. You're not at whatchamacallit.
No, we switched. We're back at.
Are you back? You're back in.
Yeah, we're back in. Yeah, but I'm just. Hold on, let me just pull this up.
Talk about a view from a field, though.
My God, that's amazing.
It's ridiculous.
People are looking at that in like Kansas right now, and they're like, "What are you guys complaining about?"
I mean, look, when we would go play there at UCLA, like. We were like taking photos like we had never been to the beach before. Like, I'm like, this is sick. Of course, it's like 10 minutes from me, but I'm like, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, and even like, I mean, we were at Pepperdine. There was like some sessions that I started. I wanted to do like angle recovery movements and get shots from the angle. And I did one exercise that looked really good on paper. And these the goalkeepers, they know that, they'll hear it from me all the time. I'm like, it looked really good on paper, but when I executed it, it was a shit show. And I try to be as forthcoming with them as possible. I'm like, not even apologizing, but like, hey, it needs to be better. And there's, again, at this level, I'm still making mistakes that I want to own up to, obviously, but I'm also like, there's no perfect session. There is, good planning, but even when I've planned, sometimes the sessions don't go as planned.
Yeah.
And I think that is for any young coach out there, like, once you get to this level, have it as figured out as you possibly can. And at every level, I'm not saying that when you're in college that you need to, say, hey, I'm not at the pro level yet, so like this session can be shit. But I think that there's opportunities where you can hold yourself to that standard and be that voice who's going to hold you accountable. And you miss a volley. And I've done that since I was young too. Not young, but like last year, 2 years ago in my career, where I miss a volley and I'm like, the next one has to be quality. And it's like, no one's really caring if it's quality or not. Obviously the goalkeepers do, but like, I know for a fact, and I tell myself all the time, like, I know for a fact I'm going to be in situations in the future in a first team environment. This was before Angel City, that I'm going to miss a ball and I need to know how to recover from that situation. I need to know that I've done multiple repetitions of being able to have composure in the next rep so that it doesn't influence the next 4 or 5 reps. And like,
it's funny, Omar, is people are listening to this going like, wait a minute, you're the coach. You know what I mean? The way you sound, this is just me saying, the way you sound right now is like a player. Like, oh my God,
I was literally thinking the same thing.
Or, oh my God, I didn't hold on to that, to that dive or that cross that came in or something. But this is the care that goes into being a coach and to being an elite coach and to getting to be one of the best. That's how much you care. You're like mentally having to do your own work. Like we could call Dan Abrahams for you if you need, because you missed a volley in a warm-up for a goalkeeper or in a training session. And that to me just shows just a level of passion and care. That's why you're where you're at. Cause I'm the same way. Like I used to, when I was warming up like pre-games or even in practices for UCLA, and my like half volleys off or something's off, like I would have to compose myself as a goalkeeper because I'm getting frustrated because I need this to be on point as if I was playing the game. Like I need to bring, my level has to be the highest it can possibly be to train my goalkeepers. And so I get you with that.
Well, go ahead, Omar.
I'll make it quick. There was a moment in preseason where we were in Florida and we had 4 goalkeepers at the time. I needed to get there early to work with 1 goalkeeper. And then after that, we had 3 goalkeepers working in towards the game. So we had our starter for that game was Didi, and then Hannah Stambach played the second game. Well, then Hannah played the second half, and then Ange played the last. And it was in the warm up where you finish the warm up, everybody go gets their drinks, everyone's chilling for a little bit, and then some goalkeepers like volleys again, some goalkeepers don't. So I guess I already said Didi, but Didi, you know, I hit like one volley that was terrible. Like but it was fatigue because we were in Orlando all week, or I was just not on it mentally. I don't know what happened. I missed one. Then I was like, okay, get your shit together. Come on. I missed another one. And then she was just like, oh, not you in your head. No. She said, don't tell me you're in your own head. You're in your own head too, Omar. But like in like a laughing way, And
Hey, Ben, can you hear me, dude?
Hey, I can. How are you?
Good, man. Good. We're just waiting for Saskia right here. Your audio sounds incredible.
Does it?
Right now? Yeah, dude. It sounds
Never gotten that
really.
compliment, but I'll take it. It's one of the
No,
best
it sounds really
unique
good, dude. It's
compliments
almost
I've
like
ever gotten.
you're like in a quiet environment. It's amazing.
I like quiet environments when appropriate. Hi, Saskia.
Hey, Ben.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's get this going here. Here we go. Welcome to Inside the 18. I'm Michael Magid, live from West Hollywood, California. With me in lovely Woodland Hills, California, the one and only, with a new hairstyle, 99 World Cup winner, Saskia Weber. Saskia, saw the post
It's
on
called
social.
a cut.
It's cut.
It's a cut. It needed a desperate cut, some layers.
Oh man!
It's that time.
And joining us,
spring.
It's a spring cut. You got a spring cut, you know, and somebody that knows a little bit about spring being in the air because the weather is finally. I'm assuming no thunderstorms, no tornadoes, nothing like that going on right now, Ben. Over in over.
All
in
right,
Texas.
now we got rain last night. Actually, we did get a storm last night, but new day. It's sunny. It's nice today.
Oh my gosh, man. So, well, obviously I just said it right there, guys. We got Ben Munger joining us from the University of Texas, Hook 'em Horns, right? That you do this thing. Is that
That's
the
it.
thing? All right.
That's it. That's
I even know that. I know that.
So let's get how's it going strong. Obviously joining us over from the university. And first off, shout out to Jill Lloyden and the Keeper Institute for connecting us. That's really fantastic. And Ben, I love the thing when I reached out and you're like, any friend of Jill's is a friend of mine. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, of course. I'll shout out Jill again. I think what she does and putting her content on the air and connecting people is really wonderful for the goalkeeper coach community. I think any information that gets put out with good intention does a lot in the United States with goalkeeper coaches. So a massive thanks to Jill as well, just for putting everything out there and for connecting us too. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, man. And Saskia, we have a big announcement to make before we get the podcast going today. I think a lot of people may be familiar with a little app called the Union Goalkeeper app out there for the Union goalkeeping community. And if you're not, just go to theuniongk.com. It shares all the information on that landing page on how to go there and sign up. But Inside the 18 will be moving exclusively to the Union GK app starting in April. So if you are checking this out right now on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, you got to subscribe over to the Union because we are moving over to the Union. And there's a lot of reasons why we're doing this, right, Susk?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to actually help everybody out there. We know that you love following the podcast and everything, but we think we want to get you guys motivated to kind of come over, just to be frank, come over and see what the app is, what's going on the app, because there's so much there that's available. And we know you love listening to the podcast and meeting all these great coaches, but they're on the app as well. And the app is so special in the fact that you can actually reach out to a lot of these coaches individually. There's educational platforms on the app. There's pretty much everything you could want as a young player and a parent and as a coach. And so we just want to bring it all together under one roof.
You know, and obviously, you know, I don't want to make this an ad read or anything like that, but
okay?
the bottom line
Was
is
that okay?
No, that was great. But the bottom line is for everybody out there. For everybody out there who's listening right now, there's so many things that we want to do with this podcast. There's so many trips we want to take. There's so many different people that we want to have on the show. There's so many other resources that we want to bring to the podcast, and we're just limited on social medias. So it's one of the reasons why we want to integrate everything exclusively into the Union. All that all that will be going directly back into the podcast, guys. You're not going to be missing a beat. I know a lot of you guys are already on the platform, so nothing's going to change for you. For those of you guys who are not on the platform, the first 10 minutes will be a preview on socials, and then you'll have to switch over to the Union app to see the rest of the show.
It did turn into an infomercial, sorry.
I know, but the thing is, I don't have to worry about Ben because Ben's already on the app, so Ben will be able to check out all the shows.
It's like 10 minutes in and it's an infomercial. Sorry. Ben, you have to tell Ange Kelly I said hi, by the way.
I'll tell her. If you shout loud, actually,
Please.
it just hurt my ears. I was going to say if you shout loud enough, she might hear you through the wall. But
or bring her in here. We grew up playing together, so yes.
I'll tell her you said hey. She'll be excited about it.
Absolutely. Love Ange.
All right. So now that we got the house cleaning out of the way, Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit kind of about your role at UT before we kind of get into the topic?
Yeah, sure. In simplest terms, I'm one of the assistant coaches here. So one of my primary areas is the goalkeepers. But as you guys know, and as probably a lot of the listeners know, as an assistant coach, you wear all sorts of different hats. So work with the goalkeepers, do some different roles within the team on the field as well. In recent, kind of just out of personal desires as well, have been diving into analytics a little bit too. So I've been doing that for the program. That kind of stemmed just from I've used it over the years for just to help me inform goalkeeper sessions. But I really enjoy it, and so I've started diving into that a little bit here too. So yeah, like I said, I think you wear a lot of different hats, but those are just kind of some of the things that I'm doing here.
You know, it's funny that you brought up the analytics thing. You know, Saskia, it seems like we were talking about this. You know, when I was like, "Hey, Saskia, are you going to get back into the league? Or are you going to look into getting coaching at the pro level?" And you're like, "It's all math now. It's all analytics. It's all math." You know, it's really moving in that direction.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I think that's. Sorry, go on.
No, Ben, go ahead. This is your show, dude.
Don't know about that, but I think that's really true. Honestly, like I said, I've used it in over the last 6 or 7 years in different ways, just to help, like I said, inform goalkeeper sessions and kind of my goalkeeper model for whatever team I've been on. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've been diving more into it. This year, I actually did an analytics course in the business department here. In the business school, and loved it and learned things that I never thought I would want to do on a computer. But it's been really, really cool to dive into, and kind of just some good professional, personal growth for myself too. I think that's definitely, it's not going to be the game, but I think anything you can do to help inform what you do and help get advantage in the game is a wonderful tool to have. So I think it's going to be a wonderful tool in the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, so Scott, how's your connection? Can you hear us?
Yeah, you guys just you're freezing and I'm freezing.
Okay.
So I might sign off and sign back in.
No worries. Speaking of the beauty of technology, this is one of the reasons why we're moving exclusively to the Union app right there, guys.
I'll be right back.
We don't have to deal with 17,000 live streams going on at the exact same time on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. We're in total control of everything. So Ben, you know, one of the things that you were talking about in regards to wearing many hats, I think a lot of older goalkeeper coaches have had difficulty with that transition because for the longest time, they were just expected to train in isolation. And, you know, I don't want to say that that's wrong, because there's no right or wrong. It's just different. The young goalkeepers nowadays in the grassroots environment, in order to be prepared for that college environment, they need to be in more of an environment where the goalkeeper coach is integrated with those academy teams, right?
Yeah, I think in simplest terms, whether it's academy, college, professional, I think goalkeeper coaches now, first and foremost, need to see themselves as full-on assistant coach who can and who has worked with goalkeepers and who can specialize in goalkeeping as well. But I think first and foremost now with goalkeeper coaches, it's assistant coach first, and you have the ability, you have the specialty background in goalkeeping, but you're an assistant coach. You could work with any group of the team. You might have a part of the team or out of possession, in possession that you prefer, but you can do all of that. And then you have the added bonus of you have background in goalkeeping, and you can work with the goalkeepers as well. Because I think, like you just said, goalkeeping separate from the team, I think, is not only a thing of the past now, but I don't think many places like want to operate like that. Again, especially if we're talking about what's best for the development of the goalkeeper as well.
Yeah. Susk, any thoughts on that now that we have
No,
you
I
back?
think we've seen that transition over time where, whether it's field player coaches getting more comfortable with allowing goalkeeper coaches to be an assistant coach, but I think it moved from the backup, from working with the defense as well as your goalkeepers, then, set pieces, corner kicks and stuff. And you just saw that slow integration of the goalkeeper coach as an assistant coach with goalkeeper coaching skills, which is what you need. And we also have to talk about the limited amount of coaches you can have in the college environment on a bench as well that get paid. So you have to make the right choices there as a head coach on who your staff is.
Ben, actually, that's funny that you brought that up, right, Suska? I never even thought about that. Even at the highest levels of Division I, budget constraints are still a reality. And if
it's
you're
NCAA law, it's rule. It's not just budget constraints. You can only have 2 full-time assistant coaches.
3 now.
Is it
They just made it 3. Oh,
whoop! I think we lost Susk right there.
2. And trust me, we found. When I was at UCLA, it was 2, and it just changed. But yeah, so you have to think about that.
I mean, I like the way that Ben's like, no, it's 3. Trust me, and I know it's 3 now.
Well, because there were, but to be candid, that's why you saw the goalkeeper coach per se, getting pushed aside. All right, so you're gonna run our camps. We're gonna pay you camp money in the summer. Right, and you'll be our goalkeeper coach. And you saw people that actually want to make this career. So then you got goalkeeper coaches that are post grads or something like that. Okay, I played there, so I'll coach the goalkeepers, and not somebody that's seriously making this a career because the investment from the school and the team wasn't there in them as well. And now you're like, no, I'm an assistant coach. I'm a goalkeeper coach. You have to wear multiple hats to get that job.
I want to put a comment.
Just being blunt.
A comment that's coming through right here, and it's from Mass Miller 07. And they go, now that keepers are viewed as more of a field player / sweeper keeper, having the keeper working closely with the team allows them to better work together as a team rather than the keeper being on the island. And I'm assuming you agree with that, Ben.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the goalkeeper is 100% no longer just, if all else fails, we have a goalkeeper. It's they organize everything. They're part of the team. They're such a massive, massive part of, in my opinion, how the whole team defends and how the whole team attacks. So it's not just one end for out of possession or in possession. They are 100% an integral part of both.
No, and you see. Go ahead, Sisk.
No, and I've said, whether you're considered last line of defense, but your first pass on offense, and you dictate the play out of the back and the build and the pace, and you are 100% a part of that 11 on the field. It's not 10-1 anymore.
Yeah. By the way, you know what Susk slag right now is reminding me of, Ben, right now? The pandemic, when everyone was at home and there was 7 people on the same Wi-Fi at the house. So everything
Mike,
was freezing on everybody.
Sometimes, Mike, I'm glad you lag. Are you making fun of me?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's get a little bit into today's topic, guys, because this is a really, really good one that Ben threw up out there right now. And today's topic is implementing an evidence-based learning environment. Ben, what do you mean by that before we kind of, share some of the content that you got here?
Yeah, so it's 2 parts, really. The first part is implementing a learning environment within itself. So by learning environment, I don't just mean session design. I don't just mean session. The session is wonderful and is a hugely important part of what we do, obviously, because it's our door of interaction with the players, and it's the players' interaction window of learning with the ball. But when I say learning environment, I mean the entirety of what we build around, in this case, the goalkeepers. It could be the team. It could be any unit of the team. But in this case, the goalkeepers. So what does that mean? Well, one, the tools that you use to enhance learning, and this won't be new to most probably, but things like film, things like IDPs, things like, the session itself is a huge tool. So it could be the tools that we talk about within the learning environment, or it could be the preparation and the structure of the learning environment. So everyone knows one thing that I think is really cool over the last few years is how much goalkeeper coaches have cared about session design and looking at realism versus isolation and looking at all different aspects. And that's a hugely important thing. But just as important as the design of the session is also, like, I think, design of long-term planning, which we'll talk about at some point. But I say all of that to say, when I say learning environment, it's all of those things put together. And an evidence-based piece, again, we, as goalkeeper coaches, we've put so much time recently in a wonderful way into maximizing the product of the session design and the outcome of the session. And so evidence-based really in two ways. In one, I think we can do a lot more to put the same kind of care into how people, whether it's athlete or even just a regular person, in this case goalkeepers, how people learn and like what the evidence says about that. And so I think that's part of the evidence base. And then the other part of the evidence base is, again, there's been a lot of talks on realism over the last few years. What does that look like for your conference, for your team? And what does data say that realism is for your goalkeepers? Because each team is going to allow shots from different areas, and each conference, definitely each league, like NCAA compared to Premier League, NCAA women's college soccer is going to have different data for the goalkeeper and different depictions of shot environments than the Premier League will.
Really quickly, Ben. First off, Susk, Jill said Ben was smart. I mean, one thing that Ben just brought up right there, is the fact in regards to like the fact is like realism is based on realism of like the demands of your actual league, your actual conference, how the teams that you play against play. It's not realism for the sake of, well, this is how these are soccer plays, these are soccer pictures. It's like, hey, we're playing A&M this weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that
I think.
No. I know it's good to clarify for whoever's listening and everything like that. But yes, I understand.
Yeah. So Ben, kind of this rundown right here. So it's like, first off, like you got the learning environment. Where do we kind of start with all of this? Before we kind of like even get on the field.
So I'm going to take us a little off path to get there. Okay. I've been on a lot of staffs and a lot of teams that, so I've been on a lot of staffs and a lot of teams. You can go back a slide. Okay.
I've
been on a lot of staffs and a lot of teams that love conspiracy theories. You can go forward to one now. And
here we go.
We never landed on the moon.
I won't go there, and if people say that they don't, then they're lying. So you shouldn't trust them. But I've been into a lot of groups and teams and staffs that love conspiracy theories. This one specifically, I'm not here to say whether it's true or not. But I've listened to a podcast and I thought it was really interesting because I was like, you know what, believe it or not, this is really applicable to to how you should structure a learning environment. So I listened to a podcast, talked about Area 51. There were, again, not here to say if it's true or not, there were scientists and their only job was to take the technology from a UFO that Area 51 had and to just reverse engineer it. That was their only job. They didn't know what the outcome was going to be. They just had, this is the product, this is the technology. We want to reverse engineer it so we can create that. So I say that because to answer the question where we start, I think you have to do the same thing. And I think that's why evidence is so important, because you have to look at the game that your goalkeepers are playing, right? So you can go to the next one, Mike, if you want. In terms of where we start, it starts with clarity on what are and you said the words a second ago, but what are the demands of your goalkeepers? And that will be widely similar between all goalkeepers. But again, if we want to maximize the learning that takes place, it's also going to slightly differ depending on what conference you're in, depending on what league you're in, and depending on what team you're on. So the starting point is clarity. And in terms of clarity, It starts with, and I've listed them out, I think, on the next one. It starts with one, coming up with a game model that has clear language and clear principles, right? That's kind of the first piece of clarity for me, is a game model for your goalkeepers that has principles. And we'll look at examples in a second, but it's got principles and it's got a clear language, so that if one goalkeeper in your group, or if you say a certain phrase or a certain word, what I am saying is also understood as what I want it to be understood as. So I think that's the first piece in gaining clarity on where do we start, how do we structure our environment. That is like priority number one. The second piece, demands of the game, and we've touched on this, so I won't really get into the weeds of this much here, but again, like, and I'll use this small example, you guys will see visuals of it in a second. One thing that has like blown me away since I've started looking at the data behind goals that are scored across, it's probably 3 or 4.
So really quickly,
Sure.
Ben, this is amazing. I want to make sure that our audience, especially the people that are listening on audio and not on the video,
Sure.
get a little bit of a chance to digest everything. So just kind of before we move on to kind of the next thing, you know, I kind of want to bring up like the tools, techniques, and effective actions with you, Saskia, because I think everyone's going to have different tools at their disposal. So it's about finding out like how you can make it work for you.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a little in the weed. I'm a little like, you guys keep breaking up on me, so I'm getting half of the
Okay,
information.
gotcha.
That is my
Okay.
problem. So
No.
I'm sitting here like, oh my God, Mike, don't ask me a question right now. I didn't hear any of it.
Oh, my bad. My bad. My bad. All right, Ben, just keep talking for 45 minutes. All right. I don't tell you.
Hold on. Wait.
I'm going to go make a sandwich.
All I see are you guys laughing. So I'm going to try to sign on again and see if that works. Sorry, Ben.
Oh my God.
No,
okay.
You're good. It's probably
just nod your head.
Stop and breathe, everyone.
Just nod your head that you understood me. I'll be right back.
And again, guys, this is why we're moving exclusively to the Union GK app for all the podcasts moving forward. So we don't have to deal with so much bandwidth being taken up by all these different platforms. Ben, so let's move on to this next one right here.
Sure.
In regards to the example of the principles and the development model right here. So I like what you said about communicate to influence, because I think a lot of times like goalkeeper coaches are just communicating for the sake of communicating because they feel like they have to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think and so this in general right now, this is just an overview of, if you look at, again, the demands of the game defensively for a goalkeeper, you could apply these 4 things, whether they're defending space or defending the goal. This is what we can expect from goalkeepers, right? So the communicate to influence thing, I think, is massive, because it's not, you hear people say a lot of times, oh, you need to talk more, you need to communicate. I think really you could go even more specific into it, and you're communicating to influence your teammates' position, their awareness, and their decision. And again, that can be, it could also, it's actually part of the attacking model that I have here as well. Because it can be in possession or out of possession, but I think that it's just a good guideline to help your keepers understand you're not just talking just to shout, step up, and just to step words. You're communicating to influence your teammates.
Yeah, I think one of the problems, you know, with that is that, especially like with younger goalkeepers, Ben, like they're so limited in regards to their comprehension of what a moment is, and basically what happens in that scenario and what's available, you know, to both their team and the other team, that they're trying to figure it out on the fly while they're talking. So they start doing almost like play by play because they're trying to problem solve. Like, is there a problem with that? Because we want them to explore and we want them to figure it out and learn. But I know that it confuses young players, you know, especially like backline players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with younger players, and to be honest, like most of my coaching obviously is with older players at this point. I've coached a lot of younger players in the past, and I think for younger players, it's still the same. You still want them to communicate to influence, but you could pick the 3 I said a second ago, where you want to try and influence their teammates' position, their awareness, or their decision. And so, if you want with younger players, you can have them. Hey, let's just start with one. Today, I just want you to communicate to influence your teammates' awareness. right? So anytime someone is building to our own goal, I want you to go across your back line, and I want you to make your teammates aware of, hey, Susie, left shoulder, be aware. Bang, done. And I think if you get even just that communication out of your players, I think it's a good bonus, even at the young age.
Yeah. Thoughts, Susk? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Are you still on delay?
I'm bowing out of this. Can you?
You're bowing out of this.
Go
All
talk
right.
talk
All right. All right. Well, all right. That's all for 99 World Cup winner Saskia Weber. She will be back on Angel City broadcast on Bally Sports, guys. Hopefully they will not have Wi-Fi issues at Bally Sports West for the next Angel City game. All right, you can't even hear us. That's all good. Okay. All right, Ben, let's move on here. Okay, so
Sure.
So we got the run of play goals right here. So is this a specific game that we're talking about here? So that when we're talking about evidence-based, or is this like a summary of all around actions?
So this is one, I won't say which, but this is one of the conferences in the NCAA, and this is every goal that was scored or conceded by those teams in this conference. And to just back up 2 seconds, the reason that we want clarity in like in this case a defensive game model, you should have one for your attacking like game model for keepers as well. The reason we want clarity is because that structure allows freedom in all of these moments, right? In all of these moments that there's a combination of, you go through that structure, those principles are applicable here. So this is just an example, like you said. I've got a dashboard that I look at, and it can filter by a few different things, but I didn't want to go there for this podcast. It'd be a lot, I think. But there's just again,
no, you're not thorough in any way whatsoever. What are you talking about?
But again, the goal being, we want to try and make it as evidence-based as possible. Even as simple things like, I'll start in the top left. You see that little graph that has location of assists. And essentially, the bigger the dot, the more assists come from that area of the field in this particular conference. So little things like, okay, well, if you want to talk about what your goalkeepers see, then if you're doing something situational, or you're doing even a movement, if it's just a movement and a shot, the majority of the assists either are coming from central just outside the 18 or in the half spaces in the 18. And so those movements should probably be pretty frequently, and the amount that they're seeing in training should prepare them for the amount of action they're seeing in the game from those places. So I think even when you do simple stuff like, hey, we're just doing, if someone wants to say, today we're just warming up with a little bit of footwork and handling, right? The classic, like, even that, okay, if you want to do that, then make it footwork that's realistic to what your goalkeepers are seeing, and again, to the demands of the game.
See, I love what you just said right there, Ben, because like I think that is one of the biggest issues I see, especially at the grassroots level, is that footwork is manipulated to make the session successful rather than the goalkeeper successful within their actions in the game. And the movements are artificial. They're not realistic to the actual movements that the goalkeeper's making in the game. This is something Phil Wedden brought up with me years back. He says, the amount of lateral shuffling that I see young goalkeepers doing. And I think back to how many times do you do this action in a game? How many times do you do this movement in a game? And how many more times, especially nowadays with the way the goalkeepers are playing in the system, is it negative movement? Is it negative movement? It's because you're starting in a higher position and you're dropping in a negative once you've lost possession. But yet there's so much goalkeeping still going on from, especially the grassroots level, forward up, and then they get into the game and their team is telling them to stay high and lined up with their line. And now all they know how to do is, sorry, I'm just going off on a rant right here, but
no, this is
really,
spot on.
really bothers me.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. Go on.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say that, like, so how, because I know that there's a lot of people out there, especially like at the younger ages, where like they don't have access to the games because there's 70 teams at their club, and they can't see all those games. And I don't know if you know this about youth teams, but their huddle can be spotty at best. It's not really focused on the goalkeeper's actions. It's more focused at midfield. So that little dot on the side, you're like, hey, did you see how Rebecca was playing? I'm like, was Rebecca the yellow jersey that I saw on the left-hand side that came on screen every once in a while? So if they're working more off concept, like how can they incorporate conceptually but still be evidence-based?
Yeah. Well, I think one, what you said is spot on. There's probably going to be very little, if any, youth goalkeepers have access to data. But I think at the simplest form, you want to try and add realism as much as possible in certain moments, right? I'm not going to say everything you do, but even things like in this example here, if you look in the bottom right, there's a traffic yes or no little section there.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, if you could go back one. Yeah, so this is all goals, right? There's a traffic yes or no. 75% of the goals involve some sort of traffic, meaning if you draw a line from the post to the ball, there's traffic present. There's a defender or another attacker in that space. So to go back to what you're saying about youth soccer, there's little things within a game that I think can be applied more. Like and again, this league is different from youth leagues, but I would imagine that there's probably more 1v1s at the younger ages. So maybe in training that's a good way to like somewhat plan your topics in a longer span of time, because okay, our keepers are going to see a lot of 1v1s. But even if they're doing something where it's not 1v1s, I'm sure that the amount of traffic is substantial, like it is in this conference. And so when they're training, even if it's something as simple as, hey, today every serve you're seeing is in your bubble and it's going to be a really quote unquote technical session. Okay, that's great. The service can be in the bubble, but how can you still incorporate traffic in that session? I think those are little things that you can do to just make it a little bit more evidence-based.
Yeah, the traffic things is always a sticky situation, especially when you're talking about the younger ages, because again, we're talking about profound concepts at very young ages, and without micromanaging these players, especially a lot of grassroots goalkeeper coaches out there are in an environment where they're not given outfield players to work with, which is changing, but it still has a long ways to go. What are your what are your feelings about taking a 9 or 10 or 11-year-old? And I know it's a little bit off topic right here because we are talking about more at advanced ages here.
Sure.
But utilizing those youth goalkeepers as outfield players within these sessions when they're still learning the game.
Yeah. I mean, I think as long as you can still get quality reps, which can be defined in a lot of different ways, but it goes back to what do you want the outcome of the session to be? If you want traffic to be an integral part, then if it can be as simple as if one goalkeeper is working, and you can have, obviously, in youth goalkeeping, you can have a lot of goalkeepers at one session, but if there's someone that's about to get reps, they can be not just standing in the way, but they can be between the ball and the posts. And that's something that your goalkeeper that's in the goal has to deal with. Are they blocking my vision? Are they blocking the path of the goal? Or the path of the ball, I mean? Are they blocking one of the posts of the goal? Like, even if the whole session isn't about traffic, the goalkeepers can start to get an understanding of it's not just always going to be ball, empty space, wide open goal, right? And we certainly don't want it to be that.
Yeah, no, I think, the thing is that, like, you kind of have to understand, like, what are the capabilities of the goalkeepers that you're working with, and make sure that it's going to be realistic to the demands of their game, but you also it's going to be trial and error, right? It's going to be trial and error, and you're going to see, like, hey, this worked in theory. It's not there yet. The execution, they're not getting what they need out of this. So rather than have your ego get in the way and be like, you know what, we're going to continue on with it. No, let's make this session successful for them, and then we can rework around it. I love here what in regards to long-term planning to maximize learning, because I can't tell you how many times, honestly, that, like, you're at the, and by the way, I just got the funniest text right now from a very, very high level goalkeeper coach who I'm not going to name. They accidentally texted the wrong person, which is hilarious. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm so honored that you're watching this right now. And it was not about that. Anyway, but I think a lot at the grassroots level, especially, and even at the club academy level, I can't tell you how many goalkeeper coaches don't have a long-term plan for the development of the goalkeeper. Not even just the IDP, but their own session plan and their own progression throughout the season. Obviously easier at the college level because you've got a finite amount of time, or at the professional level. Can you do this at the academy level?
I think a lot of things, just total transparency, I won't have as realistic of expectations at the academy level because I'm not in it every day. I think it's definitely, and that goes for everything that I was just speaking about as well. I think, in short, even if you're only seeing goalkeepers 2 times a week, I think you can start to implement this. I think the goal of topic selection, which we'll kind of get into it further in a second, but topic selection essentially meaning, let's say you plan the best academy session that you've ever planned, and it's 45 minutes and it gets exactly what you want out of it and it's flawless. If your topic selection isn't well planned long term, then just the nature of how people learn, as soon as that's done, they're going to forget it. So
kind of like a test in school. Like, I can't tell you how many times I used to cram for tests, and then the next thing you know, like, ask me about like theorem 3-4 today. I have no idea.
100%. So that's the thing is the battle with learning is that you are always battling forgetting, not because the players are not paying attention, but how many times have you heard, oh, we just worked on this 2 days ago and they're not doing it. Why is that? So when we talk about topic selection, and I won't go too much into this, but these are just some things that you can think about, right? There's obviously it can be based on your players' IDPs. It can be based on reflection and analysis of a season or of that player in specifically. So if you're talking about that area, then it can be, okay, what are their super strengths that I want to make sure continue to develop? What are their growth areas that I want to try and improve? It can be how we play. It can be opposition prep if you're in season. But with all of these being said, I think the really, really important thing is once you choose your topic, the absolutely critical part, it doesn't matter what topic you choose, it doesn't matter how good the session is, the most critical part is how you're planning long term to make sure that that is retained, because that's the goal of coaching, right? For us, one of the goals is making sure that we are implementing long-term change in the habits and in the abilities of the players. And so I think, go on.
No, I was just going to say something, because like one of the, and again, there's no right or wrong, but I can tell you personally from experience, I've had in short form situations like Dallas Cup, Surf Cup, any sort of short form tournament type of situation, playoffs. I've had outfield coaches say, I need so-and-so to be able to do this weekend, as opposed to I need so-and-so to be able to effectively incorporate this into their game moving forward. Mm-hmm. How do we change that narrative with these outfield coaches without, because again, it's a slippery slope with when you're working with the club, because you're technically talking to people that are your employers, that like they work for you. Obviously they've hired you for your knowledge base, but like, how do you say this to them to say, hey, it's not about Sunday, it's not about Saturday, it's about so-and-so's progression 4 years from now, without them getting upset?
Well, not being in a club environment on a day-to-day basis, I would still say, I think for me, it depends on what the club's goals are. I know for me as a coach, I would have a really hard time saying, oh, it's always only about the game that's right in front of us. But I do think you can do both. I think you can prepare someone for a game and help them tweak things just before a weekend. And then again, the importance, if we're talking long-term retention, is okay, you did it once, great. They made some progress, wonderful. If you don't revisit that topic in the proper time, then they're going to forget it, right? And that's that's what the battle is, right? The battle is every time we teach something, as soon as we walk off the field, the players are starting to forget it, right? Doug Lamov is really big on this. He's one of them. Joe Lloyden actually told me about him, but he's written on it, and I think it's really, really the way that he articulates it, I know has been helpful for me. But it essentially helps you realize that what we teach is not the same thing as what our players learn. And even if they show some competency of it at the end of a session, it's then our responsibility to make sure that we've planned in a way that they revisit it so that we can put it into long-term memory and so that it's not just gone the next time we do that.
Wait, hold on, Ben, really quickly, because first off,
Sure.
and the Doug, that's the coach's coach, right? That's the Doug Limhoff. Is that what that
Yes,
is?
yeah, he's actually,
Okay.
I think by trade originally, he's an educator of teachers.
Okay.
But I know he's worked with U.S. Soccer some, and then I think he's had some experience with Todd Bean and the Togo Academy in Spain too, if you know them.
I don't, but I want to bring back to like what your, because this is like a head exploding moment for me. Like I'm just like, man, like this is literally the reason like we do this show is like so I can learn. Like I'm just like literally just taking advantage of the fact that I have a microphone in front of me so that I can learn. Is that what our players learn isn't what we taught. Can you like elaborate a little bit more on that? Because I think especially for people who are just listening on the audio, like that's a very profound concept. So like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying this is stuff that I still like. It's a challenge for me to live by this daily. And it's why listening to your goalkeepers is so vitally important. I am super organized and structured in how I plan, obviously, and I know for me, I can have a plan, and sometimes on paper, what has been taught, or in the moment, what has been taught, is not the same thing as what's been learned from the players. And even if my goal for a session is I would love to see if they're a little bit more competent in this certain situation, just because they are more competent in that moment by the end of the session does not mean they've learned it. It means they've gotten more competent at it. But if we want to talk about learning from a long-term retention standpoint, then again, the planning and the structure of topics of when you revisit it is so massively important, because if you don't revisit it in the right moment, or I guess within a certain time, then it's going to be gone. And it doesn't matter how good the session is. It doesn't matter how competent they seemed in that one moment, because they don't get a chance to recall it.
I want to throw a comment out here real quickly, Ben, that I just got on the platform here. So it goes from Darknet Goalie, and he goes, my experience is that coaches train according to a general model for which the coach or club wants to play, but the models are without influence to what their opposition will bring. So we tend to go play matches with a fragmented plan for the goalkeeper. Do you agree with that?
That sounds like a really specific situation. I'm not
okay.
I think
Okay.
I mean I wouldn't discount that by any means.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons that it's important to have, going back to having like a good defensive game model. If you have a good model that has principles that are applicable in all situations, then it doesn't matter what the opponent does. Just going back to communicate to influence as the example, they could be doing anything. They could be a possession team. They could be a direct team that smashes the ball down the field. They could be in a 3-5-2. They could be in a 4-3-3. They could be in a 4-4-2. But our job in that moment as a goalkeeper is still communicate to influence. So I think that's where the clarity and the structure to maximize the learning comes into play. And I think that's where the importance comes in of that clarity.
So as you're getting here to like help them forget, which is, I mean, dude, again, this stuff is just awesome. I mean, you're like you're making me feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I don't know what I'm doing at all. I'm like, man, geez, I have no idea my coaching behaviors. But like the whole idea of help them forget. So it's that basically like we want them it to be essentially become so subconscious that they don't even remember that they learned it. Is that what you mean by that?
So let me start by saying this is not like everything must be this way and this is a comprehensive everything. This is, in my mind, this thing is, if you can use this as a tool when you're helping your goalkeepers learn, it will help maximize learning. There is something here to be used. It doesn't have to be used, to each their own. But what I mean when I say help them forget, and again, I can't take credit for this because this is the whole concept of this is what Doug Lamov writes about. But when we say help them forget, just to go back to what we were speaking about, when players learn something, they immediately start to forget it. The thing that makes players learn, or students, whatever, the thing that makes people learn isn't that they've done it for 60 minutes. It's okay, you've gotten a little bit of competence at it. When you recall it, when you revisit it, and the attempt to try and replicate it after you've had time not doing it, or if your attention's been diverted to something else, but your attempt to recall it and to revisit it, that is what makes things stick into long-term memory. So when we say help them forget, what I really mean is I'll use an example. Let's say you have a topic that you want your goalkeepers to be better at. Let's say you want them to be, we'll use distribution as an example, right? Trying to play a pass through into the six, right? Let's say they're trying to play into the six. You can work on that for 45 minutes, and it's just that, right? Different versions of it, different progressions, but the topic is you're receiving the ball, you're trying to play the six. They might become more competent at it, but ideally, and this is what interleaving is under the how section there, ideally you can do something called interleaving, and it's all right, you're working on that. Let's say you do it for 15 minutes. Great. The next 15 minutes, you're doing something totally separate. Let's say you're working on crosses, right? Collecting crosses. And then the last 15 minutes, you come back to it. So they've had the first 15 minutes to gain some competency at it. They've had 15 minutes to forget it. And to move on to something else where their immediate feedback is not based on playing six. And then they go back into, all right, 15 minutes. Now I'm having to recall it. I've forgotten it, right? I'm having to recall it. My attention hasn't been on it. I'm trying to replicate it without having had the immediate feedback and the immediate reps of it for the last 30 minutes. Does that help?
That absolutely. No, that helps explain it tremendously. And I feel like it's funny, Ben, because when you bring it up like that, I go like, oh, I've actually done this before.
Yes, and most people have, right? Most people have. And that's the thing is, I think a lot of well-rounded session designs, if they have realism, they're going to have this. But that's where the long-term planning piece comes in, because like I'll use, and just a disclaimer there's a lot of wonderful things obviously being at Texas, but I'm an open book. I would love to show video on this, but long story short, university brand stuff, I just can't. So if anyone wants to see examples, I'm happy to privately show stuff. Just so anyone that wants it, reach out, and then I'll talk more on this and show you some examples. But I could do still shots. So in this example, right, let's say the topic for the goalkeeper in the furthest goal, the little medium goal there in the black, their topic, what they're trying to do is they're trying to play me centrally. I'm in little orange in the center there, right? I'm like their six, if that makes sense. That's their goal. That's the outcome that they want. If they can't play me, then they play it wide, just like they would be playing a center back or an outside back. So in that goal, that's their focus. They're just focusing on distribution. They're getting pressed by that person that's in the black that's standing next to me. Their whole goal is it's purely attacking actions, and unless there's a transition, which I'll speak to in a minute, but purely attacking actions. If they can play me, if they can, if not, they play it wide. And then whatever happens, whether it gets to me or it goes wide, it's coming to the big goal, right? So talking about doing things to help our players forget. This session was actually a big part of the session was applying pressure, like 1v1 type situations from a certain area of the field. And so the keepers that aren't, like, we had a warm up where it was 1v1 specific, applying pressure specific, go into this. So in this moment, the goalkeeper that's just purely distribution is just thinking about, I'm trying to play six. If I can't, then I'm playing it wide. And then as they rotate, they go back into we warmed up with 1v1s. This is the topic for today. I'm trying to be successful in these 1v1 actions. Is that clear?
Yeah,
I know there are
absolutely.
some people that can't see this, but essentially, it's,
No. I appreciate you doing that for the audio listeners. And this is something I always stress, Ben. To everybody, as I say, if you listen to this while you're working out at the gym or driving your car or whatever, go back if you've got questions and watch the video, because every episode is filmed as well too. So because there's certain things that you just can't grab just with the audio that you can get with the pictures, get with the video, which is why we always do both at the same time. And with the technology of the Union GK app, we can do even more as we move forward with that. You see how I did that? That segue right there.
that was smooth.
All right, let's move on to this next picture right here.
Sure.
That you got going on right here.
Yeah, so this again, going back to the demands of the game, even though that goalkeeper is working on attacking actions, and it's a pretty simple demand on her, she's having to look and see, like in this moment, I'm not available. I'm hiding behind that little mannequin there. So she's not just receiving a pass, playing a pass, and it's a simple thing. It's still a really like the focus in this is still on her, like the technique of what she's doing, but she's having to read cues like she would. It's a pretty simple thing for her. In this case, she doesn't see me, so her option then is to play her other center back, and you can see she's getting pressed there. And then on the flip side, for this goalkeeper in the big goal, they're trying to read if the pass is going to be a penetrating pass straight through centrally, or if it's going to be kicked wide first, because obviously those have different demands when we talk about like positioning to protect the goal. So if you want to go to the next one, since I'm not an option, she plays it wide, and so again that just brings a little bit like a new demand for the keeper in the big goal in terms of, okay, ball's in the width. You can see I'm kind of starting my run there now. And then this is what the main topic of the day was, right? Was really wanted to get a little bit out of 1v1s and applying pressure, specifically for when the assist is coming from a little bit like in the half space in the 18. So this is where this is the actual topic for the day. And is it guaranteed to happen every time? No, because that goalkeeper in possession could have played me centrally. But this is one of the moments where it's like, for me, if I'm helping our players recall 1v1s that we did a few days ago, this is that moment. So again, when we talk about the game model as well, these still shots kind of depict a little bit of each one, right? So in this moment, there's some like positioning to protect is what I have it down as in the slide here. And then as it goes along, if you want to go to the next one, the ball is played to me. It's a new location. It's still positioning to protect. And then the next piece, for those that don't remember, which I'm assuming most don't, because it was also a slide for like 30 seconds. The next principle that we have is controlled or set to react, right? So in this case, she is that, right? And you can't, in 1v1s especially, you might not always be set for every save if you're going down into a shape, or if you're if you're having to close space a lot in a short amount of time. Maybe that's why the word controlled is in there, because she's still controlled, she's still ready to react. And then if you go into the last one, the last principle we have, defensive effective actions, and that's what she pulls out right here. So
that's my save last night. There we go. Quality save right there. It's funny that you said that, Ben, in regards to like controlled, and I know this is diverting a little bit from the topic here, but I think this is really important for young coaches out there to listen, is that like, let's not coach in absolutes, especially if we start coaching in absolutes with the younger ages, especially, like they start getting very literal and their actions become based off the literalness of what you said, if that's a word, to them, and go, I'm supposed to stop because coach said you stop, as opposed to like, what's going to be effective in this moment.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And essentially, like I'll use, and again, it's why the principles, I think it's why are so important, because this is a situation where it's the same principle, but it looks different in different moments. So in this moment, for a 1v1 or a moment where you're applying pressure, controlled doesn't mean you have to be necessarily fully stopped, but it does mean that you need to be under control enough that when you see cues of a shot about to happen, if you're going into a shape to prevent it, then you're controlled enough to be able to time it appropriately and to be able to be in a good shape at the right time.
Yeah. And I think there's such a big difference between being controlled in movement and just moving.
Yes.
you know, and I see that so many times, you know. And again, I apologize, I work predominantly with youth goalkeepers. I don't think older goalkeepers want to deal with my jokes, so that's why I work with that age group. But the thing is that, like, I see so many of them, and we don't want to coach anything out of them, but it's all about immediate chase. It's immediate chase, and put them immediate pressure on a ball type of thing. But it's out of control. So, like, how do we not remove these instincts, you know, that these goalkeepers naturally progress? Like, you know, you were talking about earlier about the strengths of the goalkeeper. How do we encourage these strengths, you know, but also teach them without them feeling like these are negatives of their game? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, first of all. And I think I'll stay with the example of 1v1s, right? We want them to be controlled, but when the ball gives us time, in that case, when the ball left the attacker's foot and came to me, that is a moment where the goalkeeper has time. They are still controlled in that moment, but that is a pants on fire. If you can close the space and if it's the right moment, do that fast. And then your responsibility is when the ball is back on an attacker's foot and your time is gone, you're controlled again. And that's where it goes from, again, ball going from attacker to my foot. That's where it's more position to protect, right? Make that adjustment, get in a good position to protect, and then you're going to be controlled and set to react.
I want to go to tools for knowledge building, because I think it's really important especially for young coaches out there to recognize some of these options that you put out there. And obviously, again, like you've stated, like, it's not, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. This is just what works for you. Why are these specific resources, and why you know work for you?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of it is on the field is where a lot of the exploration happens, right? That's where you're trying to create environments. That's where you're trying to find solutions, and it's where you're trying to develop some of those tools and those skills and effective actions. The building knowledge piece is something where to do that, well, one method to do that is film, like you said. And the building knowledge piece helps you. If a goalkeeper doesn't know a solution, then they can't do that solution. So film is a good way. Just one use of many for film is you get to show them different people doing different solutions, right? If I have a goalkeeper, even a college goalkeeper, that's never spread before ever. If they've never seen it, they won't know it. And I think film is a really good way to reflect on what they're doing, expose them to like tutorials or how-tos or solutions of other people. So I think that's one really, really useful tool, just from a standpoint of it helps them build knowledge. The case studies piece, I've only done this one a couple of times, but I found it really, really productive. If there's a goalkeeper that wants to learn more about a certain scenario, let's say it's crossing, I've asked before, like, okay, well, why don't you just go through your favorite 3 goalkeepers and just see if they deal with crosses in the same way in terms of our principles. So in terms of their positioning for crosses and how they deal with crosses themselves. And then just put together a few clips that kind of demonstrate how each keeper deals with them, and then you can present it. And again, it just helps the building knowledge piece. Does it help them actually do it on the field? Maybe not, but it does help the building knowledge piece. So I think that the tools are there to help build knowledge.
So let's show some of these. So you put some examples. And how are you doing on time, by the way, Ben? Because I know you got a big March Madness game. You got to get. Okay.
I'm good. I've got time.
Okay. Hook 'em horns, everybody, both on the women and men's side, both you guys. So let's pull these up right here. First off, why did you choose these specific events and these specific goalkeepers? Any specific reason?
Not so much specific reason for specific goalkeepers. For the events themselves, there's a decent amount of variety. And again, going back to clarity and your goalkeeper like defensive principles, I think that these are a good example of how the same principles apply to different situations.
Okay. So what's this first scenario right here?
Right. So this one is going to be, again, talking, I guess the main for all these principle that I would encourage people to look at is the position to protect principle. and how it changes based on the situation, right? So in this one, and it'll make sense when you see other clips as well. In this one, you've got a position to protect moment that she chooses initially to protect the goal in terms of dropping in just a little bit. And then she plays it more as like a 1v1 or a moment to apply pressure. And even though it's the same principle, the action changes. And now she chooses to apply pressure because not in her mind, I don't know what she's thinking. But based on if you're using position to protect, right, now she's thinking, okay, well, the best way for me to save this, the best way to protect the goal in my position is to close and to apply pressure a little bit. So a wonderful save, but this is just one example of rather than creating time to react, she's applying a bit of pressure and closing the space.
You know, and I love first off, you know, I love when we show all these different actions and everything like that, you know, to young goalkeepers, you know, they recognize because like, you know, especially when you're talking foundational, like ball away from player, run at the ball. And that's that they're taught, you know, come in, you know, grab space type of a thing. But based on the angle and based on the chase that's on this player right there, you know, this goalkeeper, and I can't tell who it is specifically. Do you know who is that? Jane Campbell? Who was that?
I'm not sure in this one.
Okay. But she decides to drop, you know, for depth right there and allow to kind of see how the play develops and everything like that. So it's like, I think it's just so important for young goalkeepers to see that it's not one way and then that's it. It's you got to assess, you got to read those cues, and that's going to, and those triggers are going to determine how you approach it, you know, moving forward. All right, let's go to this next one. Yeah, let's go to this next one right here. Okay, so is this Kingsbury?
Yes. So same kind of thing though in terms of, and I'm excluding the communicate to influence because we obviously can't hear them, right? But that's obviously very much happening in these cases. But same kind of thing, different situation, position to protect moment. In this sense, it's going to be more of the space, right? And you can see her little adjustment there. That is clear sign of position to protect. But in this case, she's protecting the space. And then you can see that it changes when she goes from protecting space to protecting the goal. Now she's backed in a little bit and then controlled and set to react, and then ending it with some effective actions.
Yeah, and I love the fact is that all the way follow through. I mean, you know, and by the way, you know, for anybody who's watching these and everything is like, well, okay, why aren't you guys breaking down the technique? Well, that's not really what this is about, you know. So I'm sure Ben could be more than happy to break down the technique of these actions of these goalkeepers and why they were successful. But that's for a different day. You know, and obviously, you know, when you're talking about the painted picture that you're painting here, you know, you're talking about professionals. So it might look a little bit different at your level, you know, whatever level you're coaching at. But if the intent is there, then they're growing, right?
Spot on.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to this this next one right here. And thanks for cutting all these clips, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Okay, so this is a set piece we got going on here.
And again, really, really simple in terms of all of this. All of this goes back to when we talk about implementing a structure and we talk about coming up with goalkeeper model principles that work for you, trying to make it where you don't want it to be restrictive and to be robotic. You want it to be clear and you want it to be applicable to a lot of situations. So set piece, you can see right away that her position is, again, position to protect. She's protecting space. She's not overly focused on just being tight to her line, protecting the goal right now. Her role right now is just protect the space. And it starts with that, and then you'll kind of see as it plays out. She goes from protecting space. She knows she's not able to impact it, so she drops back in to buy herself a little bit of time. And again, ending with she's controlled, set to react, and it allows her to have effective actions at the end.
Is that French?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. I just want to go back right here to the moment. There you go. Boom. I love that. Sorry, that was just for me. I wanted to see,
no,
that drop. I wanted to see that. I wanted to see the track. I wanted to see the track. No, I wanted to see the track. I wanted to see the track because, you know, that's something that I'm I'm working with a lot of young goalkeepers on is that track when they retreat. A lot of times it's like the treat. A lot of times the young goalkeeper's been like retreat means like somebody else's job. I'm just here, as opposed to dropping to actually be effective in the moment.
Yep.
Okay. So, all right. So I think this is Kay.
This is Kaylin.
Okay. So let's start here. So, well, let's see here. I think it's flashing in so quick. Okay. Okay. So what do we got going on here?
Yeah. So one thing to add just before we get into this, it's really important and these are all examples of it. If you do use, they don't have to be these principles, but if you come up with principles that you think work in a similar way, every day in training, if you want to talk about topic, these principles should be lived out, right? And regardless of the picture, whether there's traffic, whether there's not, wherever the assist is coming from, the principles stay the same. And those are the coaching points, at least for me, that I think, even though the principles stay the same, it allows you to have a lot of structure among a game that has a whole lot of variety. So again, in this moment, assist is coming from a different space that we haven't seen yet. She's in the half space in the 18. As the ball travels, like we spoke about a second ago, the ball gives us time. We use that time. So she uses the ball traveling to get into a position to protect the goal. And again, she bought herself a little bit of time. And then again, same moment, two different versions of position and protect. First one, she drops in, creates time to react. Second one, she realizes that obviously based on the cues in front of her, where the defender is, where the ball falls, where the attacker is, she realizes that it's a moment that she can apply some pressure and reduce time for the attacker and reduce space for a finish. She does it, and then again, ending with effective actions.
I did this yesterday too. I'm just as good as Kaylin Sheridan. Kaylin, you heard that. I'm just as good as you. No, not even close. Not even close. It's funny, Ben, because we bring all of this stuff cerebrally, and then there's probably a lot of young goalkeepers out there who are watching this and go, "Oh, I do this. So it's not a conscious thing. Like you have to be thinking about this stuff." As you were talking about, learn to forget. You forget you learned it, and it just becomes instinctual.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about as well is very much coach facing, right? This doesn't have to be you're saying position and protect to your goalkeepers every time they do anything. I think a lot of it helps really, really define the lens that you're looking at things through, and helps define the lens that you're using to plan your sessions and to plan long term, like weeks at a time.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. No, that's good that you clarified that because, I was thinking, oh, this is all language that you give to the goalkeeper. But if it's more internal for your own, that's good to know.
They can for sure be very familiar with the principles. And obviously it's going to give them some freedom in the structure. But I think more so than anything, the benefit of all of the structure is so that when you're planning your learning environment, which topic that you're hitting in which moment and what your desired outcomes are going to be.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. So we got another French action. It looks like right here. What is going on here? So, first off, this is developing play. Right here. It looks like it starts with. Does it start right about here? Right about here. Okay. So what's going on here?
Yep. So a moment where she has been protecting space and still is to an extent. So again, when we talk about, like for me, when I see these clips, we talk about different situations that you can incorporate when you plan training. The ball being in this space is different even in the last half space that it was in the last clip in terms of what's required of her position, right? So I'm really big on whenever we start an activity, if there's ever the ball in a space like this, wherever the starting position for the ball is going to require different things from our position because, again, the goal is the position to protect. So, again, really simple, similar to what we've seen in other clips. Her start here, her position here is starting in a place where if it's played behind, she can protect it a little bit. And then, again, as soon as she sees that it's not played in behind, she's going to a moment where, all right, well, now I'm protecting the goal and I'm going to change my hips. And it's all very fluid. And I think that's why the realism is so important in things. And again, another effective action, but a different effective action as well. Again, just showing the variety, even though there's a lot of variety in the game, the principles can remain the same.
Yeah, I mean, took all that traffic right there too. Great save. Great save right there. Still got to admire the final action too.
Have to.
Absolutely. I think you got one more clip that you put on here. Am I crazy? Let's see here. Oh, no, it's just her.
I think that one might have been the last one.
Well, Ben, I know you got to get ready for the game and everything, and that's so awesome that you all are going there to support the the basketball squad. I think one of the really cool things, I know you were joking a little bit about in regards to like UT and everything like that, in regards to what they're allowing you to show and everything, but it does really seem like there's a solid community, not just with the women's soccer team, but with the entire athletic department, as they all support each other there, right? And why is it so important for, kind of as we wrap up, why is it so important if you're in a collegiate environment that you have a community where all the athletes respect each other first and foremost, and then second of all, support each other?
I think that would be important far beyond just a college athletic department. I think at the end of the day, if no one hears anything else in this whole entire talk, the most important thing at the end of the day is that we are all humans and we're all working with humans. And I think the care piece and making people feel valued is super important. So I guess in a college setting, I think typically what we go through, whether it doesn't matter what your sport is, what you go through is really difficult. It requires a lot of grit, requires a lot of hard work. Hard work is usually always easier to accomplish if you're doing it because you care a whole lot about someone rather than doing it to prepare for someone that you don't care for that much. So I think the unity within an athletic department is vital, and not just athletic department, in a youth setting as well, because you're all trying to achieve the same thing. And it takes a lot of support. No one here, no one there, no one in academies can do things if they're trying to do it on their own. I think that's really important.
I think that's such a great way to wrap up in regards to regardless of who you are and what you're doing, no one can work on an island. Everyone's got to be working together in order to be successful. Well, Ben, man, this has been absolutely fantastic, man. First off, I just want to say congratulations for you on your union membership. We're very excited to have you on the platform. Maybe you'll even do some mentoring or do some content for us as well, hopefully in the future. But if people want to reach out to you directly over there on the app, what is your handle?
It should be Munger15, Munger15. So my first initial, my last name, and then 15.
So, and I know you're an open book, man. I know people are going to be definitely asking questions, and
we
really appreciate this. Yeah. Obviously, guys, if you want to reach out to us, it's at Goalkeeper Podcast on the Union app for a guest or topic suggestion on the Union app. Shout out to Jill Lloyden for the guest suggestion, and shout out to Ben for the topic suggestion for today's episode. And you don't have to be a Jill Lloyden or a Ben Munger to reach out to us, guys. You can be. We all learn from each other. So I think that's one thing. Kind of as we wrap up, Ben, I think a lot of people out there need to hear that you bring something to the table regardless of what level you're coaching at to the community. So don't be afraid to share. Because we all learn from each other. I can't tell you how many grassroots people I've learned from, in my career, regardless of what level they're coaching at. So it's really, really important that we keep an open mind and realize we all have something to give. If you guys don't know what the Union app is, here's just a little slide right there, guys, but go to the uniongk.com. That landing page explains everything right there. Like I said, this podcast will be going exclusively there starting in April. So you got to sign up right now. And I think it's time to hook 'em horns, right, Ben?
That's it. It's time.
All right, guys, that's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys.